your premier source for South Louisiana sports. Welcome into the American Sports Podcast. Now here's your host, Beedee.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is episode 7 of the American Sports Podcast. I am your host, Beedee, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I have rebranded the podcast. We got a new logo, we got a new format for the video, and I've added some segments. The newest segment is a segment I like to call Speak Up. It's basically where I give a voice to regular fans like you and me. And today we have our very first guest ever on the podcast, and of course our very first guest ever on the Speak Up segment, along with the interesting questions segment and the Louisiana sports recap. So let's hit some sponsors and then jump right in.
The American Sports Podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors. Sola Safety. Sola Safety becomes part of your management staff and helps you complete the tasks necessary to have a robust safety management system so that you can focus on production. Now more than ever, executives, business owners, and organizational leaders are trying to stretch their dollars, maximize their people power, and create long-term sustainable results for their companies. Program development and implementation is our business. Let us help you implement a safety management system which will enable your organization to maintain compliance. Contact Sola Safety at 337-210-3352. 337-210-3352.
All right, so this is our newest segment, Speak Up, where I want to give a voice to the fans. So many times we watch these videos or we listen to the radio shows of the, quote, sports experts, but the only time we ever have the opinions of fans is when they call into these shows. And a lot of times it's hard to get into those shows because the demand is so high. But I want to kind of flip the script in a way a little bit, and I'm going to periodically interview a fan and get their takes and opinions on some of the different topics going on in the Louisiana sports world or the national sports world, whatever it should be. So, without further ado, the first ever guest on the American Sports Podcast and the first ever Speak Up segment guest, good friend of mine, George Villien. G, how does it feel having the privilege of being my first ever guest?
Man, it's pretty awesome, dude. Thanks for having me on, BD.
Absolutely, man. So I shot you a couple topics that I kind of wanted to discuss, but before we get into that, I kind of want you to give a brief introductory, if you will. You know, I don't need to know your whole life story, but just like some of your favorite sports teams, the teams that you follow, that type of thing.
Man, I'm kind of a home guy, so I follow the Cajuns. Obviously, I went to school there, graduated there, so I follow pretty much all their programs, from football, basketball, baseball, softball, the four major sports. I'm not an LSU fan, but I do follow them and I do root them on because obviously down here, almost all of my friends are LSU fans. Avid Saints fan, follow the Astros. Pretty much my team's right there. And the Pelicans, I do follow the Pelicans. Probably just as much as I follow the Saints, which is kind of rare down here because we're not town, but that's probably my favorite sport is basketball.
Yeah, I do see you going to a lot of Cajuns basketball games. I've been to a few of those games with you, and it's definitely a good time. But some of the other things that I kind of wanted to bring up, the first thing is obviously something that's, not with a limited amount of sports and stuff going on right now. The one thing everybody wants to talk about is the Saints quarterback position. You know, Drew Brees announcing he's coming back. Teddy Bridgewater signing with another team, moving on in free agency. I think that the big thing on everybody's mind right now, and it's kind of a 50-50 line, is Taysom Hill the future successor of Drew Brees? And he's all but surely been named the number 2 quarterback heading into the 2020 season, according to comments made by Saints head coach Sean Payton. It seems like he is the plan for the future after Drew Brees. But what is your opinion of Taysom Hill as a quarterback?
Man, I think he's a good quarterback. Do I think he's a starting quarterback for the future? I would probably say no more than yeah. I was more of a Teddy guy after those games that he came in and he did great. Like I said, I wasn't one of the ones screaming, put Taysom in, put Taysom in. I think Teddy did his job good. I would have much rather see the Saints sign both Teddy and Drew again. I know that was pretty hard because of the high demand for someone like Teddy elsewhere and the money that would get thrown at him. And again, I do like Taysom Hill. I mean, who doesn't? I think every coach in the league salivates when they see him on the field for the Saints. He just does so many things so well. But again, him as a number 2, doesn't that kind of kill everything that he did good for us last year?
Yeah, and I was gonna get to that point here in a bit. With my opinion of it is you saw at times last year when Drew Brees went down with an injury, Teddy Bridgewater coming in as a starter. When Taysom Hill moved up to that number 2 spot, they didn't use him like the Swiss Army knife skill set player as much because they were afraid of him getting hurt. So I'm curious to see how they're going to navigate that situation going forward. Because as of right now, they don't have a number 3 quarterback on the roster. Now, will they draft somebody? Will they sign somebody else in free agency? I was hoping they'd go after Chase Daniel. He ends up signing in Detroit. But it's going to be interesting to see. So, but my opinion on Taysom Hill as a future quarterback, whether it's for the Saints or anybody else, I want to see more basically. So it's a small sample size of what we have. I think he's definitely grown because he's got more exposure at the position. I did see some potential in the preseason game against the Chargers last preseason, and some potential when he was under center for the Packers. I went back and watched a little bit of film, and I think what's in his favor is that the game has evolved to move away a little bit from a traditional drop back passer. Now, I say that, but I do still think that that type of quarterback, the traditional passer quarterback, will always be successful in the NFL. But the game is more focused around offense, high paced, fast paced offense, and you see guys like Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, guys who are dual threats, have the big arms, but can also beat you with their legs. And I think Taysom Hill could fit into that mold. But ultimately, I think we just don't have enough to go off of. I mean, the guy in his career as a quarterback in the NFL has 6 completions out of 13 attempts for 119 yards with 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. So it's just not enough there. I will say this though, I trust Sean Payton. The guy is the highest paid coach in the league. If I'm not mistaken, he's the highest paid coach in the world in regards to sports coaches. And he's in that position for a reason. You know, he tried to trade up for Patrick Mahomes a couple years ago. Everybody was kind of questioning that at the time because people didn't see the in for Drew Brees. So I think when he says that he sees something in Taysom Hill that most of us probably don't, you know, he's at practice each day, and I just trust him. But either way, it's obviously going to be a much different type of offense without Drew Brees under center after 2020 or 2021, whichever he decides to let go of the game after. But I think obviously 2020 is going to be a very telling year for Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, everything you said. I mean, we don't have a lot on him, but I just don't know. Just seeing how effective he was at what he did. Like you said, we don't have enough on him. We need to see him play quarterback to see if it outweighs him as the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, and I think I see them going with a 80-20 Brees to Hill at the quarterback position in 2020. You know, if you go back and look, he played about 13% of the quarterback snaps last year when Brees was healthy. So yeah, I think you see that jump up to about an 80-20. And again, I'm going to be interested to see what they do with him as a Swiss Army player. Because if he gets hurt, like I said, right now they don't have a number 3, and do they trust a number 3 to be a rookie coming out of the draft? You know, do you trust that in the event Breeze gets hurt and then Taysom gets hurt, and then let's say you're 9 games into the season and you got 2 losses and you got a good chance of making the playoffs, but now you got a rookie under center and you're wasting Drew Brees' last year. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see. But sticking with football, the NFC South, talking about quarterbacks, the NFC South is now loaded with talent at the quarterback position. Teddy Bridgewater in Carolina, Taysom Hill and Drew Brees in New Orleans, Matt Ryan in Atlanta, and boy, oh boy, now Tom Brady in Tampa. I, I hate to see it, man. I hate that we're gonna have to play him twice a year. I was really hoping that the Chargers would swoop in at the last minute and woo him to LA, but it really does suck. And I don't know how you feel about it. Everybody wants to call him the GOAT, and I think in some regards he is. But how do you feel about playing Tom Brady twice a year and now that he's in a Bucs uniform?
Look, I'm a Saints fan, so you know what my take is. Drew Brees is the GOAT. Brady's pretty good quarterback too. Uh, I don't want to play him 2 times a year. And anybody out there that says they do because we're going to show him this and that, man, the guy is good. And I don't see any reason to put yourself in a situation where you'd want to play him twice a year. Obviously, we're going to have to do it, so we're going to do it. But I just get a lot of this feedback from Saints fans telling me they're glad he's at Tampa. We get to beat him 2 times a year. Look, if we do come out on top twice, awesome. But that guy's no slouch. And Tampa's kind of loaded, man. They haven't shown it in years. Same thing with the Falcons. Like, when you look at their roster, they're really good football teams. They just haven't put it all together. Can Brady go to Tampa and do that? Maybe so. You hear the big talking heads talking about, was it Brady? Was it Belichick? I think it's a little mixture of both. I think Brady's going to go there, and I think for at least 1 year he's going to do well.
Yeah, I could see that happening too. I mean, obviously, I think right away it's a huge upgrade over 30-30 Jameis Winston. I broke it down in one of my recent podcast episodes. Like right after he signed, he definitely makes them better. I mean, that's bottom line. It's obvious. But when when he first signed, all the talking heads were talking about, well, the Bucs are now Super Bowl contenders. You know, most of them thought, oh, they're Super Bowl contenders just because Brady's on the roster. I don't see that. I mean, Tampa Bay was in the bottom of the league in pass protection and run blocking last year. They have a stout defense. They have a good coaching staff. But you now have also an aspect of Byron Leftwich, who is a young quarterbacks coach, a young offensive coordinator, um, leading an offense by arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, how does that aspect play into it? You know, so I think it reminds me of the situation when LeBron James went to Miami with the Big Three, and everyone was saying, well, right off the bat they'll be successful, but they won't be all that great because they'll still have to mesh and everything. And then you did see some transition there in the early part of that NBA season, but I think the NBA season and the NFL season are much different in regards to the number of games you play, obviously. But I also think the rhythm of the season and the amount of times you practice, and there's only so much game time that you can compare. You can't compare practice to gameplay completely. So I think there is going to be a gel. There's going to be some time to mesh there. I don't see the Bucs being Super Bowl contenders right off the bat. Can they make the Super Bowl? Sure. But you're right. I mean, the Falcons have a loaded roster. I think they had some injuries last year. I think they had a kind of a fluke year. I do expect them to be a lot better. I think their owner saw that in keeping Dan Quinn, a new head coach in Carolina with Matt Rule coming over from Baylor. Teddy Bridgewater is no slouch at quarterback. He's going to be a good quarterback for them. He is well above average. He's better than a game manager. I don't care what anyone says. He's going to be good for them. They've got, if not the best running back, one of the best running backs in the NFL in Christian McCaffrey. And then, the Saints are going to be good again. The Saints are going to be good again. They got a loaded roster, probably the most complete roster in the NFC South. But as we've seen in the past, that doesn't always translate to wins on the field. So we'll see what happens, man. Like I said, I hate Tom Brady coming in and having to play him twice. I think going 1-1 against Tom Brady would be success for me. You know, so it'd be success for me. So real quick, man, I want to get your take on it. You are a business owner, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But what's your take on all this coronavirus nonsense?
Man, so I don't know. I just wish we had more people on a scale of 1 to 10 that were on a 5. Because I feel like anyone you run into is either a 1 and doesn't care about it at all, or they're a 10 and they're spraying you down with Lysol if you get too close. I mean, I rarely find people at a 5, besides people I know and hang out with. Strangers are either a 1 or a 10. Oh, it's stupid, or get away from me. So I think if the world would kind of settle in at a 4, 5, or 6, this would be a lot more tolerable. I hate the fact that it took sports away, man. That's a lot of people's release, man.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, the whole thing about this week. I started thinking about that. Is one of the questions I got on our interesting questions segment last week was, do I think the coronavirus pandemic is going to affect the upcoming football season? And I talked about that last week. Um, and it piqued my interest. I went back and I kind of looked, trying to get an aspect of what the Cajuns' upcoming season looks like. And I think it's interesting, man. I started looking at it, and this is the first time since the 2004 season, so 16 years, that the Cajuns are not playing a Power Five team, Power Five program, or a ranked team. So I was just wondering, what's your opinion, man? You think this is an advantage for them or a disadvantage?
So you got to look at it from both sides. So side one, you have a chance to go undefeated. Next year, you may be favored in every game except that App State game. That's probably never happened before here. So you have a chance to maybe go undefeated, which will be amazing, great. But on the other hand, you got to look at it. You're not playing any ranked teams. If you do drop a game, how bad does it hurt you because of how weak your schedule is? So, I mean, there's pros and cons in every situation. I'm happy about it. Hopefully that'll get some wins, string a bunch of wins together, get some fans in the stands. That's really what this football team needs right now. After the few last years of Coach Hud and a few little debacles that the program had, they lost a lot of fans, man. I mean, there was a time when I was going to Cajun Field in the beginning of that HUD era that it was one of the hot tickets in town. Now, they weren't selling out the stadium, but, I mean, it was full. It was fun. There was a big tailgate. It was very entertaining day on Saturdays. And then you had some of those Tuesday and Thursday nights games that they played. Still drew a big crowd. And now you get here, and Napier's having even more success than HUD did. But it's like the fans just aren't showing up. And I'm dumbfounded by it. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I really just don't know. But I'm hoping maybe this softer schedule than normal, string a few wins together, get some butts in the seats, get it loud in there, string a few more wins together, get a few more people there, and then you're back to rocking and rolling. Maybe it'll take an undefeated season, to where the next 2-3 years down the road we'll have fans there, even when we drop some games we're not supposed to. But I think Billy Napier's got this program headed in the right direction. And like I said, maybe it's falling at the right time. The time where we need to string some wins together and get butts in the seats and get people excited about Cajun football again. There was a huge excitement. I mean, we've talked about it. There was a huge excitement when HUD first got here. And then it kind of got a little exciting when Napier got here, but it's like it didn't grow. It didn't keep growing like it did for HUD. And I don't know why, because Billy's having a lot of success.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. 100%. I'm looking at my notes here in front of me as you're talking, and you basically hit every point that I had. I think that it dumbfounded me for a while, and it still does to an extent, about why people aren't going to the games. And I'm a culprit of it too, man. You get busy in your life or whatever it should be, and these games, with the internet and everything, these games are more accessible than ever. But I feel like Dr. Magger's done a great job with the program, dropping prices on concessions, dropping ticket prices, changing up parking restrictions and parking procedures and everything to try to get fans out to the game. And still, like you said, it's hard to draw people to these games. I think a little bit of that is maybe the tainted end of HUD's tenure here. Um, and to start that, Billy Napier has come in and had some success, but I think it's just the people in Lafayette. They get tired of the New Orleans Bowl. They get tired of these small bowls. They don't want to waste their money to go to a game that they're not even sure the Cajuns are going to win, type of thing, and that may be sound silly to some people, but I think that's a large part of it. So I think you're right. It's going to take a different type of season from the Cajuns football program to turn that around for the fans, and whether it's an undefeated season or a one-loss season, whatever it should be. Now, going forward with this 2020 season, I think that's a perfect opportunity to take care of business and get there, because you don't have a big program or a top ranked team on the schedule. Now, last year, Appalachian State being ranked, even though the Cajuns lost that game, I think does the Cajuns a huge favor, because I still think Appalachian State is a very strong program. I think there's a possibility that they're in the top 25 or close to it when the Cajuns play them again this coming year. And I think that if you win that game, you make a name for yourself in the Sun Belt. It's the first time you'll ever beat Appalachian State, and it could turn things around. I think the media, doesn't always do great things, sports media included, but I think they did great things in regards to promoting the Appalachian State UL rivalry, and I think we're coming up to a time where that rivalry is growing. That was the most exciting game for me going into the season last year. It's probably the most exciting game going into this upcoming season, because it's the biggest game on the schedule now that there's no big programs.
Yeah, I agree. And you played them twice last year. One game wasn't so close. The other game was pretty close. I don't know, man. I think that's the two class teams. Since they've changed the format, they've been the top two dogs on both sides. So that's who you're looking forward to next year. That has to be who's circled on your schedule. That has to be who you're gearing up for. Now, you can't be so focused that you just drop a game before them. But, man, what it would be, I don't know who App has on their schedule. I haven't looked at it yet. You'll probably know better than me. But if those two teams could play undefeated, that would be a real treat for a lot of people, because it's two very good programs at the moment. And obviously the Cajuns have a lot of work to do. They've never beat them. So, but, man, you got to take App State in this. They're going to be good again. But, yeah, I just feel like that the way this schedule's set up is win, 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 and let's beat App State.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think another thing that's exciting for the program right now, it's exciting to me just because of the type of program that UO is. And some other people, they're all about loyalty, and I understand that to an extent. But I think one of the things that's exciting for the program is the attention that Billy Napier has got from some other programs about moving on to I don't want to say bigger job. I mean, obviously it's a bigger job, but I wouldn't say it's a better job either, but a different school. And I think that to have some success this year, it could possibly be his last year. So that's always a good thing. I've heard many coaches say it when other programs or other teams or other businesses come knocking looking for your employees, it means you're doing something right. So it's a credit to the program. It's a credit to the football program. I mean, you look back on the Ricky Bustle days, and then nothing against Ricky Bustle, but we're light years ahead of where we were. So, and it's even the credit to Hudspeth. So, one coach that I do want to talk about with the Cajuns is head men's basketball coach Bob Marlin, who I think his seat is growing extremely hot. He's been here a while now. I didn't go back and look to see how many years he's been here now. I know you're a big Cajuns basketball fan. I know I did see you voice your concerns, your opinions over the way the game ended or the season ended in the Sun Belt tournament. But do you think it's time to move on from Bob Marlin? And what do you think are his biggest hurdles right now? What's holding the Cajuns program back?
Okay, so you said it best. I'm a huge Cajun basketball fan. I don't think I missed a game in 3 years besides Georgia State. Last year was the day before my wedding, so I ended up missing that one. But we did watch it at the rehearsal dinner.
Man, you could have still made that game.
But so I'm a big Bob Marlin fan too. This guy runs a no-nonsense program, and if anybody follows it, Cajun basketball, they know. The turnover on this team is ridiculous. I can't fathom being a freshman to a senior on this basketball team and playing with a different starting five. Every year, 4 different guys I would have to play with every year. And not due to we got better players coming in, so now these guys are going to sit and these guys are going to play, or, injuries and stuff. No, we lose people every offseason. People get cut. They don't always list the reasons why. And it's just mind-blowing, man. Like, you can't return like 6, 7 guys. We return 3 or 4, and then we get like 2 or 3 JUCO guys, and then we sign some freshmen. It blows my mind. Now, as far as Bob Marlin goes, I love the guy. Like I said, no nonsense. You do drugs, you don't do good in school, you skip class, you sit, or you get kicked off the team. I like a program like that. But why are we consistently getting the guys that turn out to be the guys that we got to suspend or we got to cut? Like, is it a UL problem? Like, I don't see the football team having this problem. Is Bob that much stricter than Napier? I would say no. I don't see the baseball team having this problem. Like, I don't think these kids are coming here and getting in the wrong crowd at UL. So I don't know if this is a recruiting problem or what, but we have to stop getting a full recruiting class, and then before they're juniors, 80% of them are gone. Like, we can never carry over. This might be the first year, but we haven't gone through the offseason yet, that we're going to return almost a full starting lineup without, like, some seniors leaving and stuff. And that hasn't happened the past few years, and I think that's the biggest problem. And like I said, I love Bob Marlin, and I love that we don't have like a nonsense program. But what do you think about that? What do you think the problem is?
No, I absolutely agree, and I think one telling tale of that was this past season, because it was a season riddled by injuries and there was no depth on the bench. I mean, you can't overcome. You can talk about the next man up mentality all you want, but if you don't have quality players to step up and be the next man up, you're not going to have success. And the Cajuns had a number of injuries this year. Most of their injuries were over 2.5 to 3 weeks long. Some of they had 2 starters that went out at the beginning of the year, for the year. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to overcome those types of things when you don't have the depth. And I think you pointed to the issue right at hand, is turnover and recruiting. So whatever has to happen, I think maybe Bob Marlin doesn't have the right people on his staff. I think maybe, he's not recruiting in the right places. Maybe he's recruiting too close to home for some things. I'm not saying don't sign guys from the Lafayette area or Louisiana, but maybe broaden that up a little bit. And of
But
course, I'm no expert on recruiting, but
he gets the guys. He gets the players. Justin Miller was a good basketball player. Jerikas Davis was a good basketball player. That's 2 guys that got quality minutes. And then we go to the summer and we come back for basketball season, and guess what? I don't see Justin Miller and Jerikas Davis on the roster. And they weren't seniors. So where did they go? Why are we losing all these guys? That's what's killing this program.
yeah, it's baffling.
And like I said, the way he runs his program, I don't think he's getting these guys that are bad apples. Like, he doesn't seem like the guy that would go out and do that. Why would you go get a bad apple and run a no-nonsense program? Then let him do what they want. If that's the guy you want, let him do what he wants. I just don't get it. Like, and like I said, I don't think the atmosphere around UL is turning all these kids into, bad people. So what's happening? Like you said, do we need to change the recruiting? Something needs to happen, because we can't lose 3 or 4 sophomores and juniors every single year. But to his credit, this year, I don't see that happen. I know a lot of the kids, and Russell's going to come back as a senior. You're going to have a lot of kids returning that got a lot of minutes last year. I think you're losing PJ Hardy and I don't know who else. Slipping my mind. Mason Oakland.
Yeah.
So you're losing 2 guys. Mason didn't really play that much. I mean, he got minutes this year because of all the injuries, but PJ played. But again, he got suspended. He got hurt. Why was he suspended? But you're going to have a core returning. I've heard we have a few good recruits. You have Malik Wilson, who's probably going to end up being one of the best basketball players that ever played here if he makes it all the way to his senior year without any bad injuries or anything. But I really think Bob is a great coach. He could stop this turnover of in the off season losing so many juniors and sophomores. I think we'll be all right. And you touched on it on the first thing you said. We have to fix what happened in the conference tournament because that was the most sickening thing I think I've ever watched. And I'm lucky my TV still works.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think Bob Marlin's a great coach. I enjoy, I think I I agree with you. I think he's built a strong program. I think he started off real hot with recruiting when he first got here. He had some good years. I mean, there were some good years in the Sun Belt Conference. And I think maybe just the last couple of years, it's gotten a little stale. It's gotten a little below what the expectations of the local fans here. Because the basketball program here at UL is nothing to scoff at. It's a good program. So I think his seat is a little hot right now. It's all going to be about 2020. Hopefully, some of that retaining some of the same players and pushing a lot of the same starters out. Hopefully, that can change things around. But I do see Bob Marlin's seat being a little hot. So, I want you to be able to plug your business a little bit, man. Tell us a little bit about the meat market.
We out here on 2810 Shemin Metairie Parkway, a little past the ballpark on the right. Cajun Market Meats. We got all the fresh steaks, all the fresh meats that you need. Sausage, smoked sausage, fresh sausage, boudin, cracklings. We got everything you need to have a good barbecue, or just come on by, get a plate lunch. We start serving at 10:30. We got hot boudin all day long, boudin balls, egg rolls, all that. So, yeah, we got pretty much anything you need for a little Cajun get-together. We ball crawfish Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. We kind of do a little bit of everything. So, if you haven't been by yet to check us out, come on down. We'll treat you right.
That's right. Y'all go check out my boy G at Cajun Market Meats. I'm telling you, they got a drive-through. Those boudin biscuits in the morning are to die for. So y'all go over there, check them out. G, to top this off, this Speak Up segment, I'm going to ask all the fans that are on this segment to submit a question for the interesting question segment later in the show. So you got a question for me, man?
Yeah, man, I got an interesting one for you. So obviously, COVID-19, pandemic, NBA season and playoffs, they're going to be affected. The season's already affected. It's going to affect the playoffs. What do you think the best course of action is going to be when we get to all clear, when we can play again? And what do you think about this March Madness style NBA playoffs?
Ooh.
Do or add a few extra teams to it, one and done.
I like that, man. I tell you what, I talked a little bit about that last week on the show, but I'm going to expand on that and kind of hit the March Madness question. So tune into the show on this week, man, and I'll answer your question for you. G, you got anything else you want to tap on, man, before we head out?
No, man, that's it. I think I wasted enough of your time, buddy. But look, enjoy the show. I listen to it every time you put it out. I'm so thankful that you wanted me to be on here, man, and I had a really great time. Nothing but love to you, buddy, and I'll see you later.
All right, George Villien, Cajun Market Meats out in Youngsville. Y'all go see my boy. George, we'll get you back on the show soon enough, man. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you, buddy.
All righty.
Later.
Interesting question.
The first question is, what do I think the solution is to bringing the NBA season back, and how is the season affected from all this coronavirus pandemic? And what do I think about a March Madness style tournament in the NBA once it does come back?
Interesting question.
All right, so obviously nobody knows what is going to become of the regular NBA season after this suspension due to coronavirus lifts. We don't know when or if the games will be resumed, and it obviously presents a big problem. We're not playing games right now. The revenue that the league normally takes in around this time is all gone. But given the league's hope of starting a new season this coming October, which is when the seasons normally start, um, they would essentially have to squeeze in both the current regular season and the postseason for the 2019 season, and then begin the 2020 season in October. So I think that's the biggest impact it has so far, aside from the money part of it, is how do they squeeze all of this in? So basketball has one of the longest seasons, along with baseball, because they have so many games in the postseason. It just takes forever to get through that season, and then they only have like 2 or 3 months off, and they start up again right back in October. So it's going to be a challenge to fit again the regular season, the postseason, and start the new season on time next October, so that not everything is pushed back. Now, the second part to that question, I think, is a valid and very exciting solution to that problem, and that is basically doing a March Madness style tournament in the NBA for the postseason. So you could basically do all 30 NBA teams making it to the postseason, or an aspect of the postseason, basically. So the way that I kind of did some research and kind of figured out a way that this could happen. Um, I took a little bit of notes from the NBA season, how they do their wild card stuff. I took a little bit of notes from the NFL, but not as much. And then I kind of meshed the current NBA postseason with those things and came up with this. So basically, you would get 4 top seeds, all right, with a first round bye. Currently, if you just went off the standings today from when the season was suspended, those first top 4 teams would be the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Toronto Raptors, and the Los Angeles Clippers. So those 4 teams will get a first round bye. Okay. Then the bottom 4 seeds, all right, the bottom 4 teams in the league, which would currently be the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Golden State Warriors, those teams would play a 2 best of 3 series. Okay, so those teams would play a best of 3 series with the winners of each of those series advancing to the first round. Now, keeping it in the conference. Okay, we want to keep it in the conference with those series. So the Western Conference teams will play the Western Conference team. The Eastern Conference teams will play the Eastern Conference teams in a best of 3 series with the winners advancing to the first round of the tournament, March Madness style tournament. Now, that would leave 24 teams in that first round. Those 24 teams would split up and play a best of 5 series. Okay? Once though, and we're doing best of 5 series. Once that elimination happens, then you would just go on to your typical playoff. You would go on to your typical playoffs because it would only be 16 teams remaining, and that's how it is. Top 8 seeds in each division, in each conference, makes the playoffs in the NBA. So, top 4 seeds get a bye. Bottom 4 seeds play a best of 3 game series to get into the tournament. Once you have those 24 teams, they play a best of 5 series. And once you're down to 16 teams, you just go into your regular playoff, NBA playoff. So it allows 30 teams to basically advance to the postseason in some regard. I think there's a lot of pros and cons to it, but I think there are more pros than cons. The best thing it does is obviously give teams that started kind of slowly because of difficult schedules or injuries, it gives them a chance to make the postseason. One team in particular that I really like this for is obviously the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans started to kind of get their groove. Zion comes back. This would benefit them. They would make the playoffs, and I think they could do some damage in the playoffs. They're a scary team, and they match up well with a lot of other teams. Now, the downside to this is obviously that teams that did not start off great and have not had great seasons, it basically rewards them and is a positive consequence of a early bad season. So consider like the Warriors. The Warriors have had a terrible season, but they've also played their entire season without Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. Now, this timeline, depending on when this would start, would possibly give Steph Curry and Klay Thompson time to heal and be back for that. So think of the aspect of that. You got a healthy, fully staffed Warriors team coming back into the playoffs as one of the bottom seeds. They could do some damage in this tournament. Some damage, okay? But it would also be very, very unfair to force the Bucs, who have the NBA's best record right now, into a potential first-round series with a very fully healthy Warriors team. All right. So I think it'd be very interesting because I think it gives teams time to get some players back from injury. I think that, again, some teams that started off slow but then kind of came on towards the middle of the season, like the Pelicans, would have a great chance in the tournament in this aspect. And I think, it's pro basketball. It's kind of like the any given Sunday thing. Any team can be beat any day. So I think it's a very intriguing concept. I would love to see it, and it does solve all the problems of the current suspension that is created by the coronavirus pandemic. So I think I would like to see it. That's a very interesting concept.
Louisiana Sports Recap.
This is your Louisiana Sports Recap for this week. The NFL has officially expanded the postseason. They will now have 14 teams in the postseason for the NFL effective in the 2020 upcoming season. Each conference will now have a third wildcard team, with only one team getting a first-round bye. Looking back on the 2019 football season, only 10 teams in the NCAA surpassed 6,500 total offensive yards, and the Cajuns program sits at number 7 on that list of 10 with 6,918 yards. The list tops out at LSU in the top spot, followed by Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Hawaii, University of Central Florida, and then the Cajuns at number 7. 8 through 10 are Memphis, Alabama, and Washington State. This week, Saints coach Sean Payton reported that their draft headquarters will be set up shop at the Dixie Brewery in New Orleans East. The brewery is owned by Saints and Pelicans owner Gail Benson, and the brewery has much more space to spread out and set up the draft room and still practice some social distancing. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver announced this week that they will not hold the NBA draft until the currently suspended season is complete, no matter what that timeline looks like. Major League Baseball is making financial moves to provide minor league players with a stipend of $400 a week and medical benefits through at least May 31st. 2 coronavirus stories this week that hit home. Saints legendary kicker Tom Dempsey has reportedly recovered from coronavirus and is doing well, while sadly to report, Bobby Hebert Sr., the founding father of the Who Dat Nation, Cajun Canyon Bobby Hebert, passed away this week from complications related to coronavirus. That is your Louisiana Sports Recap. So this brings us to the end of the podcast episode. To me, this was the best episode yet. We had our first guest ever. We talked about some NCAA stuff. It's been tough not having any sports because of the pandemic, but that's the least of our problems, I think, right now. So I hope everybody stays safe. I hope everybody's listening to the mandates on social distancing and things like that, so we can nip this thing in the bud and move on with our lives. I don't want to stand on my soapbox too long, but I do want to move forward. We're going to continue this once a week of episodes of the podcast. I'm going to try to continue having more guests, make it more interesting. If you are interested in being on the Speak Up segment and giving your fans' point of view on the different topics, just hit me up on Facebook, or you can email me at americansportspodcast2020@gmail.com, and we'll try to set it up. If you have any topics or anything that you want me to discuss, please hit me up and let me know. And then, as always, I encourage you to submit your questions that you may have that you want me to discuss to the Interesting Questions segment, again, on Facebook or through the email. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I will see you again next week.